Well, good morning. This is Ian R. Crane. It's the morning of Wednesday, 29th of August 2018. Now, I should still be taking a break from the morning live streams. I'm going to recommence them next week when I think most people, hopefully, will be back from their annual holidays and ready to get back into the fray, as it were. But I took a trip, a couple of hours, at the Miston Springs Protection Camp to go up to Gateshead, to Gateshead Law Courts, to be precise, to support Mark Steele. And regular viewers of my live streams, Sanity versus Insanity, will know that Mark Steele is very much on point in the campaign to raise awareness and to encourage people to do their own research on the risks to all health, not just human health, associated with the forthcoming 5G telecoms networks. Now, earlier this year, it became very apparent that the Sheffield tree removal was linked directly to the implementation of 5G in Sheffield, because the University of Surrey and their Centre for 5G Excellence Day, which proved beyond any shadow of doubt that basically trees and 5G just don't mix. And a video that I've also published more recently from Bournemouth City Council, where one of the consultants working with Bournemouth City Council and with the Ordnance Survey to look at the SITI phone masts admitted that even hanging baskets have a negative effect on the 5G signal. And many papers have now been published, and in every paper that is produced by academics who are not on the payroll of the telecoms companies, they all call for a moratorium on the introduction of 5G, because it is a microwave frequency which in lab tests has proven to have significant negative health impacts, and it's a military technology. And this military technology has been linked to the phenomenal increase in PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and indeed suicide amongst ex-service personnel. It's also linked to the increase in suicide at Bristol University over the previous couple of years, and Bristol University was a test bed for 5G networks. And interestingly, I'm guessing that somebody at Bristol University is taking a chunk of money from the telecoms companies, because it was announced just last week that Bristol University is going to be a test bed for 6G. So what could possibly go wrong there? Well, Mark Steele is a very passionate man. He's a businessman, he's an inventor, he has a number of patents, particularly patents relating to light frequency, to his name. And Mark Steele became very concerned when he saw the program for the introduction of LED street lighting, some of which is on 24/7, some of which I witnessed for myself yesterday. And the fact that there are 5G antenna mounted on many of these streetlights. And what we do know, because of the frequencies of 5G, there is going to have to be a transmitter, receiver every 300 meters or so. Reasons why phone masts are now considered as permitted developments. The phone companies have access to land. They basically just simply send a letter to the local authority claiming that basically they've got permission and they're going to build a phone mast. And I think they can build up to 75 feet without really getting any special permission to do so. So Mark had been subject to is currently subject to a injunction, to a gagging order brought forward by Gateshead City Council. And that one of the paragraphs from that gagging order, and it's very clear that Gateshead Council are somewhat embarrassed by Mark's diligence. Also, it's pretty answers. So the Mark Steele injunction prevents him from publishing written statements, making video statements, or producing other communications in the media, social media, are likely to cause harassment, alarm, or distress to residents of the borough of Gateshead and or elected members, employees, contractors, or agents of Gateshead Metropolitan Borough Council. Well, of course they don't want the residents of Gateshead to be caused alarm and distress, because what they don't want is that they don't want more people in Gateshead or elsewhere to start to look at the increase in negative health impacts from this test bed of 5G Gateshead. And this has led to nosebleeds, particularly amongst children, to sleeplessness, to depression, to an increase in spontaneous abortion, a miscarriage, indeed a measurable increase in some cancers. Mark is calling for more research to be done, but Gateshead Council and those who are obviously providing this technology don't want anyone looking into it. So a little while ago, Mark actually confronted a couple of councillors who rocked up outside his house. And Mark was a little suspicious about their behaviour, so he went outside the house and asked them who they were, apparently. And, the subsequent altercation became the subject of yesterday's court hearing. So Mark was charged under the Public Order Act, Section 4.1, which is threatening, abusive, or insulting behaviour. And in fact, if I give you the full text of this part of the Act, it's fear or provocation of violence. A person is guilty of an offence if he or she was using towards another person threatening, abusive, or behaviour, or distributes, displays any writing, sign, or other visible representation which is threatening, abusive, or insulting. Now, this carries up to 6 months imprisonment. But there has to be intent to cause that person to believe that immediate unlawful violence will be used against them or any other person, or to provoke the immediate use of unlawful violence by that person or another, or whereby that person is likely to believe that such violence will be used, or it is likely that such violence will be provoked. So there was some toing and froing between Mark's solicitor and the Crown Prosecution Service yesterday. At one point, the Crown Prosecution Service were trying to accept a lesser charge, indicative of the fact that they're starting to get nervous that they can't make the original charge. And fortunately, of course, Mark rejected that invitation. Well, as things unfolded, then it became very clear that Mark obviously wanted to take the opportunity to express some of his concerns about 5G during the course of the hearing. And ultimately, it was agreed that Mark should actually represent himself. And he was more than ready to do this. So the hearing got underway, but it took a very interesting turn when the first prosecution witness was called, Councillor Donovan. Immediately she walked into the room, the magistrates called for a recess. And this clearly shocked or surprised the legal observer in the court, a legal advisor in the court. But when the magistrates returned, it transpired that one of the magistrates actually knew Councillor Donovan, but didn't know that she was going to be a witness. So the magistrate did the right thing and removed themselves from the hearing, which left two magistrates. And the legal advisor made it clear that because of the complexity of this particular case and the significance of the content of this case, she didn't believe it was appropriate to continue with just that was an option. But she put it to Mark and to the Crown Prosecution Service, and indeed to the magistrates, and it was unanimous that the case should not proceed with just two magistrates. It needed at least a full bench. So the case had to be adjourned. And of course, the ideal situation is for that case to be adjourned after the full injunction hearing, which is scheduled for October the 11th. And that will be heard in Newcastle Crown Court. Well, how unfortunate or serendipitous that the availability of the courts and all the witnesses is not until after that date. So the public order offence will now be heard, if it's heard at all, in the Gateshead Law Courts on October the 23rd. So, 2 dates for your diary, because these are going to be seminal hearings. I have a suspicion that Gateshead Council may not actually pursue with the injunction hearing. They have until September the 13th to pay the fee to the courts and to submit their statement that they do wish to pursue with the injunction hearing. So after September 13th, we'll have an idea whether or not the injunction is simply to be withdrawn, dismissed, or it's going to go to a full hearing in Newcastle Crown Court on October the 11th. If it does go ahead, then obviously the outcome of that will, without any shadow of doubt, have some bearing on the outcome of the public order case, which will be heard on October 23rd. So somebody in Gateshead is clearly rattled, and people working alongside or with local authorities right across the country who are involved in the rollout of 5G need to start doing research and need to start asking the questions, because fracking is going to have a massive impact should it go ahead, but fracking impact right across the north of England, potentially affecting about 30% of the population. 5G is going to affect every single person. Whereas fracking is initially going to target the rural areas, 5G is going to initially target those living in the urban areas. But it will eventually be rolled out right across the country. And 5G is crucial if the global corporatocracy is going to establish its much vaunted Internet of Things, i.e. its total control grid. And of course, I know that there will be some who say, oh no, this is just rampant conspiracy theory, just like fracking was apparently a rampant conspiracy theory when I first started the national tour in 2013 to stimulate curiosity into this technology to extract unconventional hydrocarbons. So the evidence is there. The evidence is freely available. And of course, the corporatocracy is doing everything it possibly can right now to restrict your access to that information. Certainly restricting the distribution of information through social media. So the onus is on each and every one of us to take the initiative and do the research so that we at least have an overview of the concerns raised by scientists and academics about the issues associated with the military microwave technology that is now being planned to be rolled out on a largely unsuspecting civilian population. And of course, as we have said earlier, that this cannot be done without a massive decimation of the tree population, not just here in the UK, but everywhere, because 5G and trees with leaves and trees with leaves with water on don't mix. So Gateshead is very much a focal point, just as Sheffield has been a focal point with this. And this is an opportunity to springboard the curiosity of people and get them to take a look at what's occurring in Gateshead. And the information that will be presented in court. It must be presented in court. If the court try to suppress it, then Mark will invoke Article 6 of the European Human Rights Convention, which is the right to a fair hearing. And he will make it very clear that his passion, his concern is directly related to his knowledge, his expertise, and his awareness. Serious implications that this technology has for the people of his hometown, Gateshead. And of course, that applies right across the country. So, today, 2 dates for the diary: October 11th, Gates in Newcastle Crown Court; October 23rd, Gateshead Law Courts. But in the meantime, do your own research, look at the academic papers that have been produced on the 5G negative health impact, and then ask your elected representatives questions, because every single council in the country is under pressure to roll out and do everything they can to support the rollout of this untested technology. At the very least, the precautionary principle should be applied. But as I've alluded to on numerous occasions over the past couple of decades, the corporatocracy and their puppets in government don't give a flying frack about you or me. We are simply human resources to be used, abused, and discarded on a whim. On that sad note, I'm going to check out for today, and I will be back with the daily live streams from Monday, September 3rd. So that's next Monday, and they'll go out at 8:30. So thanks for joining me this morning. And Mark Steele appreciates all the support he's getting from many quarters around the country, and indeed some quarters that people perhaps would be quite surprised. So, there's certainly a situation here where not everybody in the establishment is behind this agenda, but it's going to take each and every one of us to get involved to prevent this from rolling out within the next 2 years. You have a great weekend.